Are JavaScript switch statements really that useful? And if so, how do they work? Well, in today's video, we're going to answer both of those questions. So what exactly is a JavaScript switch statement? Well, a JavaScript switch statement is a type of conditional check that is generally used whenever you have a lot of different comparisons that you have to make all at once. And it makes your code a lot cleaner and a lot neater whenever you have all these different comparisons compared to a bunch of if, else if statements. So to write our first switch statement, we're just going to say switch. And we're going to follow that up by opening and closing parentheses, just like an if statement. And then also, just like an if statement, we're going to follow that up by opening and closing curly braces. Now, inside of the opening and closing parentheses, we're actually going to put our condition, our base case that we're going to be wanting to check against. So let's say we want to check to see if the value is equal to 1. So we're going to put a 1 here. And then we're going to use what's called a case. So we're just going to say case, and then we're going to put our case. So let's say we want to check to see if this is equal to 0, and then we're going to put a colon. And then after that is where we're going to execute our code. So after the case, whenever it meets this case right here, or if it doesn't meet this case, it won't hit it. But if it does meet this case here, it's going to execute the code right below it. So let's just say console.log 0. And then we need a break. So every time we execute something, we need to have a break statement. That way it doesn't fall through. And I'll explain falling through here in just a few minutes. But let's go ahead and put another case in here. And this time, let's go ahead and say our case is 1. So in this case, we're just going to console.log 1. And then we're going to put another break statement. And if we save that, we go over here and inspect our console, we can see that we're logging out 1 to the console. So what exactly is this break statement here doing? Well, a break statement is used to break out of both switch statements and loops, and whenever it encounters a break statement, it's going to skip everything else and it's going to go to the next execution. So whenever we encounter a break statement, let's say we encounter this break statement here, it's going to completely break out of this whole switch statement here. And to show that, let's go ahead and change this to 0, so it will hit this one right here. And then let's just console.log after the switch. And if we save that, you can see that it's going to log out 0 because it hit this case right here. Then it hit this break statement, so it broke out of this entire switch, and then it went to the next line, the next possible execution, and it went to this console log here, and it executed this. If we didn't have that break statement though, this is what's called falling through. And since we don't have a break statement here, it's going to fall through to the next case. And then once it reaches that break statement, or it reaches the end of the switch statement in general, then it's going to break out of that and it's going to go into the next one. But right here, since we didn't add a break statement, it's going to do what's called falling through, and it's not even going to look at this case, it's just going to go to this next execution. And then once it finally meets this break statement, it's going to break out of this switch statement here. That's why we have 0 logged out of the console, because it hit this case right here, then it fell through because we didn't have a break statement, and it completely ignored this case right here. It fell through to this next execution, and then it finally met that break statement, which caused it to break out of this and go to the next line's execution. So why do we have this fall through functionality? It seems kind of useless, doesn't it? Well, the reason that we have this fall through functionality is for things like this. Let's say that we have 3 separate cases and we don't care which case it meets. All we care about is it's going to execute the exact same code regardless of which case it meets. So let's say we have case 0, 1, and 2, and we're just going to console.log 0, 1, or 2. And let's say we also have cases down here. Let's say 3, case 4, and case 5. And whenever we meet these cases, we'll just console.log 3, 4, or 5. So whenever we meet one of these cases up here, it's going to fall through each one of these extra cases. So we meet this 0 case, but there's nothing actually below case 0. Like, there's no actual code there. So instead of it actually just not executing anything, it's going to fall through these 2 cases because there's no break statement yet. So it's going to fall through these 2 other cases, and then it's going to execute this console log because we don't care whether it meets 0, 1, or 2. And we can see that it can meet any of them, and it's still going to execute this exact same code. Now, if we have something like 3, it's going to execute this code down here now, and it's going to completely skip all 3 of these cases up here, but it still meets case 3, and there's nothing underneath of case 3. So it's going to fall through case 4 and case 5, and then it's going to execute this console log here, because again, we don't care whether it meets 3, 4, or 5, as long as it meets one of them, then it's going to execute this. So what happens if we have something that doesn't meet any of the cases? Let's say we have a -3 here. It's not going to meet any of the cases. What do? We don't have any code that we can execute? Well, there's actually a way that we can execute code if none of the cases are met. And this is the default case. And this default case, what it does is kind of like the else statement in an if-else statement. It's kind of like the else statement where as long as nothing else is met, then that's going to run. So whenever we hit the default, we can say console.log nothing was found. And if we save that, we can see nothing was found was printed to the console. And remember, we always want to have a break statement even inside of the default clause. And we can actually, with the default clause, we can actually put it at the very top as well, and it's going to work exactly the same. Now, another thing we can take a look at is we can actually use regular operators inside of here as well. So if we want to say 1 plus 2, it's actually going to evaluate that and take that evaluation as your base case. So if we save that, 1 plus 2 is actually equal to 3, if you didn't know, and it's going to meet this 3 case down here. So it's going to, of course, fall through 4 and 5, and it's going to log out 3, 4, or 5. Now, we can also use this in a Boolean fashion as well. So let's go ahead and remove all of these extra cases, except for the default case. And let's say we want to see if it's true or false. So we could say if it's true, case true, we could say console.log it's true, and actually we're going to add the break statement because we should always add the break statement. And if we save that, it's actually going to log it's true to the console. Now if we add in false and we save that, we can actually see that nothing was found is logged out of the console. That's this default case here. And that happened because, of course, we have false here. Our only case is true, and it did not meet that, so it's going to default to the default case. But since we can use Booleans in here, we can also use logical operators. And if you don't know what a logical operator is, I've already made a video on it. You can check it out in the card above. Anyway, we can also use logical operators in here. So we could say not false, and if we save that, it's going to evaluate to true. And we can also do something like this where we say 15 is greater than 14, and logical operator 5 is greater than 4. And of course, these both statements are true. So if we save that, it's true. It's also going to log out to the console. And if we do something like this, where one of them is false, then we're going to say nothing was found because this one is false and says that we have to have both of them to be true for the whole thing to be true. they're not both true, so this whole thing evaluates to false. So we don't have a false case, so it defaults to the default case. And that is about it for the JavaScript switch statement. Now, if you have any questions, make sure you post them down in the comments down below. I'll answer any questions that you have. If you did like the video, make sure you slap a like on it. Check out the full playlist, link is right next to me. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.